Mira lived in a small town where everyone knew each other and talked about everything they saw. She worked at a supply store near the old road where travelers often stopped. The store was quiet most mornings, filled with the sound of shelves and soft footsteps. Mira liked the quiet because it helped her focus on her work. She counted items carefully and placed them in bags with steady hands. Her face was calm and her voice was gentle. Mira always wore long sleeves no matter the season. Even when the sun was bright and the air was warm, she kept her arms covered. Faint scars marked her skin, though most people only caught quick glimpses. Some customers noticed and whispered when she turned away. Others laughed softly and called her strange. They thought she was weak because she did not answer them. Mira heard the laughter and the words, but she did not react. She had learned long ago that silence protected her peace. She focused on her work and avoided long conversations. At the end of each shift, she cleaned the counter and locked the door. Then she walked home alone through familiar streets. Her home was small but clean and filled with simple things. She kept her shoes by the door and her coat on a hook. A small table stood near the window where light entered each morning. Mira often sat there and drank tea in silence. She liked to watch the world move without joining its noise. People in town thought Mira had always been this way. They believed she had never left the town or done anything important. They judged her by her quiet nature and her scars. They did not ask questions or seek the truth. To them, she was just a simple woman behind a counter. One afternoon, the town felt different. Banners were placed along the main street for a special visit. A respected veteran named Tom was coming for a local gathering. People spoke of his service with pride and excitement. They prepared the hall and cleaned the roads. That same afternoon, Mira stood behind the counter as usual. The store door opened and several visitors entered together. Their voices filled the room with laughter and conversation. Mira greeted them politely and continued her work. She noticed one man standing a little apart from the others. Tom was tall and carried himself with quiet confidence. His face showed lines of experience and thought. He looked around the store with calm eyes. When he noticed Mira, he observed her carefully. He saw her steady movements and calm expression. The visitors joked among themselves as they browsed the shelves. One of them laughed when Mira spoke softly while answering a question. Another glanced at her covered arms and smirked. Mira did not react and continued to arrange items. Tom heard the laughter and felt something stir within him. He had seen many expressions in his life. He recognized cruelty when it hid behind jokes. He watched Mira closely as she worked without complaint. Mira reached for a box on a high shelf behind the counter. As she lifted her arm, her sleeve slipped back slightly. A faded tattoo showed briefly on her forearm. The mark was worn by time but still clear. It was a symbol from a military unit long ago. Tom's body froze the moment he saw it. His breath slowed and his eyes fixed on the mark. The noise of the store faded in his mind. Memories rushed back with sharp clarity. He remembered dust-filled air and heavy silence. He remembered fear and trust shared between strangers. He remembered following that same symbol into danger. The sight of it now felt unreal. Mira noticed Tom staring and quickly pulled her sleeve down. She looked away and felt a familiar weight in her chest. She did not want attention or questions. She returned to her work and kept her head low. Tom stepped forward slowly toward the counter. His hands rested lightly at his sides. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and respectful. He greeted Mira and thanked her for her help. Mira nodded politely and rang up the items. She avoided eye contact and spoke only what was needed. Tom studied her face and her quiet strength. He saw no weakness in her posture. Around them, the other visitors continued to talk and laugh. They did not notice the tension growing at the counter. Mira handed Tom his bag and waited. For a moment, neither spoke. Tom wanted to ask about the tattoo. He wanted to confirm what his eyes told him. But he sensed her wish for silence. He chose patience over sudden questions. As Tom left the store, he looked back once more. Mira was already helping another customer. Her calm did not waver. Her scars remained hidden beneath fabric. Outside, Tom paused on the steps. The afternoon light felt heavier than before. He knew that Mark meant something important. He knew the town did not understand who she was. Inside the store, Mira felt his gaze linger even after he left. She exhaled slowly and steadied herself. She reminded herself that the past was behind her. She focused on the present moment. The bell above the door rang as customers came and went. Laughter and whispers continued as always. Mira stayed quiet and strong behind the counter. She did not know that the truth was closer than ever. The next morning, Mira woke early as usual and prepared for work. The sun rose slowly over the town and painted the streets in gold. Birds sang softly near the river, and the air smelled fresh with dew. Mira dressed in her long sleeves and tucked her hair neatly behind her ears. She ate a small breakfast and drank tea quietly at the table near the window. Her mind wandered briefly to the previous afternoon, to the man with the calm eyes. She wondered why he had stared at her arm and why he seemed to notice the tattoo. Mira told herself to focus on the day ahead and not dwell on strangers. At the store, she unlocked the door and arranged the shelves carefully. The morning was slow, with only a few regular customers stopping by. Some smiled politely, others nodded in greeting, and some whispered quietly as they moved through the aisles. Mira greeted each person with the same calm voice and steady hands. She placed boxes in order, folded cloths neatly, and arranged small items on the counter. Every task gave her comfort because it was simple and known. Later in the morning, the door opened suddenly, and the bell rang loudly. Mira looked up and saw a man standing there, tall and strong, with a uniform of the past in his memory. It was Tom, the veteran who had visited the day before. He carried himself with quiet authority and respect, and his eyes searched for something familiar. Mira felt a moment of surprise but continued her work without changing her expression. She handed a customer their items and then stepped back to see what Tom wanted. Tom approached slowly and spoke softly, careful not to startle her. He asked if she could show him her arm for a moment. Mira hesitated and then, with a small nod, rolled back her sleeve just enough to reveal the tattoo. The symbol was old but clear, and it carried a story of courage and survival. Tom's eyes widened slightly as he recognized the mark immediately. He reached out, not touching, but as if to honor what it represented. He told Mira that he had served in the same unit, and that he knew many who had been part of it. He spoke carefully, not wanting to frighten her or draw attention. Mira listened quietly, her hands folded in front of her, her expression calm but attentive. She had not spoken much about her past to anyone in town, and now someone had recognized a piece of it without judgment. Tom continued, sharing stories of the unit, of courage, fear, and the quiet moments in between battles. He did not speak of glory, only of loyalty and survival. Myra's thoughts drifted to the past as he spoke. She remembered the days she had spent helping soldiers, treating wounds, and offering comfort in chaos. The scars on her hands and arms were not just marks of pain but of life saved and danger faced. She had endured hardships quietly, never seeking recognition. Now, hearing Tom's voice, she felt a strange mixture of relief and pride. People in the store began to notice the change in atmosphere. The laughter and whispers from before were gone, replaced by quiet curiosity. Tom and Mira spoke softly, and the energy in the room shifted. Other customers watched without interrupting, sensing the importance of the moment. Mira spoke slowly, describing her work as a medic and the days she had spent with the unit. She told him how she had carried supplies, helped the injured, and stayed strong when others feared. Tom listened carefully and nodded in understanding. He told her that the stories of bravery were not hers alone but belonged to everyone who had served alongside her. He explained how rare it was to see someone carry such experiences with humility and calmness. Mira felt warmth spread through her chest as he spoke. She had never received praise for her past, only whispers and laughter. Now, someone who understood looked at her not with mockery but with respect. As they talked, Mira realized the town might never know her story fully. But she no longer felt the need to hide her past or her scars. The recognition from Tom was enough to remind her of her own strength. She felt a connection with him that she had not expected to find in the quiet town. It was a bond formed not by words alone but by shared understanding of courage and survival. Tom asked if she would consider attending the town gathering that evening. He wanted her presence, not for show, but to honor those who had served and those who had been helped. Mira paused, thinking quietly, then agreed with a gentle nod. It was unusual for her to be part of a crowd, but something inside encouraged her to go. She felt it was time to stand, even quietly, and let her past be known in small ways. The day passed slowly, with customers coming and going. Mira worked steadily, placing items on shelves and counting the till. She could not stop thinking about the conversation with Tom. It reminded her of all the quiet days she had lived, of the hidden strength she carried, and the lives she had touched. She smiled softly to herself, a small warmth in her chest that had been missing for years. Evening came, and Mira prepared for the gathering. She dressed in simple clothes, covering her scars as usual but with a sense of readiness in her posture. She walked through the town streets, noticing the banners and decorations for the event. People greeted her politely as she passed, some whispering curiously about the quiet woman who had chosen to attend. She did not respond to the whispers but kept walking with calm determination. At the gathering, Tom was waiting near the entrance, quietly scanning the crowd. When he saw Mira, he offered a small nod of encouragement. She returned the nod and entered the hall with steady steps. The room was filled with townspeople, and the energy was different from the store. It was respectful and attentive, and Mira felt the weight of eyes but not the weight of judgment. Tom introduced her quietly to a few officials, explaining her past work as a medic in the unit. Mira listened, nodding politely, but she spoke very little. Her presence alone told the story of courage, humility, and endurance. People began to realize that the woman they had once laughed at had a story they could not have imagined. The murmurs of the crowd shifted from curiosity to admiration, and Mira felt a quiet satisfaction. The evening passed with speeches and stories of service, of bravery, and quiet strength. Mira stayed mostly in the background, listening and observing. Her attention remained on the small moments, the details of conversations, and the respect in Tom's eyes. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen not for her silence or her scars, but for her courage and the life she had lived. By the end of the gathering, Mira understood something new. She realized that being simple in the eyes of others did not mean being weak. Her quiet life, her patience, and her endurance had shaped her into someone strong and respected. Tom approached her once more, nodded, and quietly thanked her again. Mira smiled softly, knowing that some recognition did not need loud words or applause. She returned home that night with a sense of peace she had never felt before, ready to continue her life quietly but with a new understanding of her own strength. The morning after the gathering, Mira woke early as usual and felt a quiet calm in her chest. The sun had barely risen, and the town was still covered in soft light and morning mist. She dressed carefully, choosing her usual long sleeves, and tied her hair neatly. Her movements were slow and steady as she prepared breakfast and drank tea at the small table near the window. Her mind kept returning to the previous night, to the gathering and the respect she had finally felt from the townspeople. For years, she had walked quietly through the streets without recognition, and now something had shifted. Even Tom's presence had left an impression that warmed her heart quietly but deeply. At the store, Mira unlocked the door and began her routine. The shelves needed arranging, the counter needed cleaning, and the boxes needed stacking. She moved with careful attention, knowing every item had its place. The morning was slow, with only a few customers passing through. Some smiled politely, others nodded in greeting, and a few whispered quietly as they walked by. Mira greeted each one with her usual calm voice and steady hands. Her mind, however, was not on the customers but on the thought of seeing Tom again. By late morning, the bell above the door rang more often as townspeople came to the store. Some were returning from the gathering, still talking quietly about what they had seen and heard. Mira noticed their faces had changed, softened in expression, their eyes more thoughtful. Even those who had laughed before seemed hesitant now. The atmosphere of the store felt different, heavier with respect and curiosity. Mira continued her work quietly, not seeking attention, but aware of the small shift in how people looked at her. Midday came, and a few new faces entered the store. Mira greeted them politely and helped them find the items they needed. She noticed that some of the visitors glanced at her arm but did not ask questions. Her scars were still hidden beneath her sleeves, but the memory of the tattoo lingered in their eyes. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing her story had touched someone without her needing to speak much. Suddenly, the door opened again, and Tom stepped inside. His presence filled the small store with a sense of calm and focus. He smiled softly at Mira and nodded in greeting. Mira returned the nod and continued arranging items on the shelves. Tom watched her work quietly, noticing her careful movements and steady posture. He could see that her calm was not weakness but a sign of strength earned through years of experience. Tom approached the counter and spoke softly, careful not to startle her. He asked if she would be willing to share more about her time in the unit, not for the town, but for him. Mira paused, considering his request, then slowly agreed. She rolled back her sleeve slightly, revealing the tattoo once more. Tom's eyes softened as he recognized it immediately, and he nodded in quiet understanding. Mira spoke gently, describing her days as a medic, how she had carried supplies and helped those injured in difficult situations. Her voice was calm, her words simple, but the story carried weight and meaning. Tom listened carefully, asking questions when necessary, but mostly letting her speak. He told her that many in his unit had remembered her courage and strength. He said that what she had done had saved lives and given hope in impossible situations. Mira felt a mixture of pride and relief. She had never sought recognition for her past, only done what was necessary quietly. Now, hearing acknowledgement from someone who understood, she felt a deep sense of peace. As they spoke, a few townspeople had gathered near the doorway, curious about the quiet conversation. They listened without interrupting, sensing the importance of the moment. The whispers and laughter from before were gone, replaced by attention and respect. Mira continued speaking, explaining how each day in the unit had taught her patience, courage, and the value of helping others. She described the fear, the challenges, and the quiet moments when small acts of kindness mattered the most. Tom nodded throughout, showing her that he understood every word. Time passed quickly, and the store filled with more customers. Mira and Tom's conversation continued, drawing attention naturally without forcing it. People began to see the woman behind the counter not as someone simple or weak, but as someone who had lived experiences that few could imagine. The quiet confidence in Myra's voice and the steady calm in her movements spoke louder than words ever could. Tom shared small stories of the unit, illustrating the challenges and dangers they had faced together. Mira listened, smiling softly at the familiarity of shared memory and understanding. By afternoon, Mira felt a shift in herself as well. She realized that her past, once hidden and burdened with silence, could be acknowledged without shame. The scars on her hands and arms, the tattoo on her forearm, and the quiet strength she carried were not weaknesses. They were proof of courage, resilience, and the life she had lived. For the first time in many years, she felt seen for who she truly was. Tom asked if she would join him for a short walk after the store closed. He wanted to continue their conversation in private, away from the crowd. Mira hesitated briefly, then nodded, feeling a quiet trust in his presence. She finished her work and locked the counter carefully, arranging everything as she always did. The town streets were still filled with soft light as they stepped outside. They walked slowly along the path near the river, where the water reflected the sky and the trees swayed gently. Mira spoke softly about her life in the town, her quiet days, and her routine. Tom listened with respect, offering small stories from his own experiences that mirrored her feelings. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than awkwardness. Mira realized that this connection, built on respect and shared experiences, was something she had never expected to find in the town. As they walked, Tom asked if she had ever thought of sharing her story with others. Mira shook her head gently, explaining that she had lived quietly by choice. She did not need recognition, only peace and the ability to continue her life in calm. Tom nodded, understanding fully, and told her that respect could exist without loud praise or acknowledgement. He said that sometimes the most meaningful recognition was quiet and personal, exactly what she had experienced. Evening came slowly, and Mira returned home feeling lighter than she had in years. The house felt warmer, and the familiar objects seemed to welcome her quietly. She sat by the window, drinking tea, and reflected on the day's events. The conversation with Tom, the subtle respect of the townspeople, and the acknowledgement of her past created a calm happiness within her. She realized that her quiet life, once seen as simple or unimportant, carried strength and meaning beyond what others could understand. Mira smiled softly to herself, thinking of the small victories in life that did not need attention. She thought of the courage she had carried quietly for years, the lives she had helped, and the trust she had built in others. Her scars, her tattoo, and her calm demeanor were all part of who she was. She felt pride in her past without needing approval from anyone else. The connection she had found with Tom gave her hope that understanding and respect could exist even in a quiet life. Night fell over the town, and Mira prepared for bed with the same care she took in the morning. She folded her clothes neatly, arranged her small table, and placed the kettle on the stove for the morning. As she lay down, she thought about the future and the small changes that had begun in her life. She knew that the world might never fully understand her story, but she no longer feared their judgment. Her life, her courage, and her quiet strength were enough. Mira closed her eyes with a calm heart, ready to face the days ahead with patience, dignity, and quiet. The next morning, Mira woke early, feeling the soft light of dawn on her face and the quiet hum of the town outside. She dressed carefully in her long sleeves and tied her hair neatly before preparing a small breakfast at the table near the window. The air smelled fresh with dew, and birds sang softly in the trees near the river. Mira sipped her tea slowly, thinking about the changes she had seen in the town and in herself over the past few days. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that her life and her experiences were finally recognized, even if only by a few who truly understood. For years, she had walked in silence, unnoticed and judged, and now she felt a sense of belonging she had never known. At the store, she unlocked the door and began arranging the shelves and counters with her usual care. The morning was calm, with a few regular customers stopping by for simple items. Some smiled politely, others nodded as they passed, and a few whispered quietly, but there was no laughter or mockery. The atmosphere in the store felt lighter, warmer, and more respectful than it had in years. Mira moved through her tasks with steady hands, noticing the small changes in the expressions of the townspeople as they came and went. Her heart felt peaceful, and she realized that her quiet strength had begun to change the way others saw her. Later in the morning, the bell above the door rang sharply, and Mira looked up to see Tom entering the store again. He walked slowly, scanning the shelves and finally stopping near the counter where Mira was arranging boxes. His eyes softened as he greeted her with a nod, and Mira returned the gesture, keeping her movements calm and steady. Tom asked if she had time to speak for a few minutes about the work she had done in the unit. Mira hesitated briefly, then nodded, recognizing the importance of the conversation and the trust between them. She rolled back her sleeve slightly, showing the tattoo once more, and Tom's eyes reflected recognition and respect. They spoke quietly, sharing stories and memories of the unit, the people they had helped, and the challenges they had faced. Mira spoke with calm clarity, describing the long days and nights, the fear, the care, and the moments of quiet courage. Tom listened carefully, nodding, asking questions, and telling small stories of his own experiences that matched her memories. The conversation drew a few curious townspeople who stood near the doorway, listening without interrupting. They began to understand that the woman they had judged lightly was someone who had faced fear and danger with courage and strength. The atmosphere in the store shifted, and whispers of admiration began to replace the whispers of mockery that had once filled the room. By midday, the store became busier, but Mira continued to work with her calm focus. She helped customers find items, counted money carefully, and organized the shelves with steady hands. Through it all, She felt the subtle change in the way people looked at her. Their eyes no longer held judgment but respect, curiosity, and admiration for the quiet strength she carried. She realized that her life, once hidden and underestimated, was now slowly inspiring others to see her differently. Even the scars on her hands and arms, once a source of shame, were now marks of courage that people noticed but did not judge. Tom stayed for some time, continuing their conversation in quiet tones. He spoke of the unit, the sacrifices made, and the quiet moments of bravery that often went unnoticed. Mira shared her experiences as a medic, explaining how she had helped those in danger, comforted the injured, and carried responsibilities that tested her strength daily. Their dialogue was calm but powerful, filled with understanding and mutual respect. Mira realized that her quiet life, once dismissed as simple, was now seen as meaningful and significant. She felt a deep sense of peace knowing that someone truly understood her past and valued her courage. In the afternoon, a few townspeople approached Mira, asking questions softly about her work in the unit. She answered gently, speaking with calm clarity and sharing only what she felt comfortable revealing. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried strength and honesty that captured the attention of everyone listening. People began to see her not just as a quiet woman behind a counter, but as someone who had lived a life of courage, care, and patience. The atmosphere in the town felt lighter and warmer, as if the respect she had earned had spread quietly among the people. Mira continued her work with steady hands, quietly proud of the subtle changes taking place around her. Evening came, and Mira closed the store with her usual care, locking the doors and arranging everything neatly for the next day. She walked through the quiet streets toward her home, noticing the soft glow of lights in windows and the gentle rustle of leaves in the trees. Her mind reflected on the events of the day, the conversations with Tom, and the quiet recognition from the townspeople. She felt a new sense of confidence and belonging that she had never experienced before. The scars on her arms and the tattoo on her forearm were no longer symbols of shame but of the courage and resilience she carried within herself. At home, Mira prepared a simple meal and sat near the window, drinking tea and watching the last light fade from the sky. She thought about the small but meaningful victories of the day, the connections she had made, and the understanding she had received. For the first time in many years, she felt fully seen for who she was, not judged for what she looked like or how quiet she had been. Her life, once simple and unnoticed, now held significance that she had quietly carried all along. She smiled softly, feeling warmth in her chest and peace in her heart. The next morning, Mira woke with a sense of purpose, ready to face the day with calm and steady hands. The town had begun to see her differently, not as someone simple, but as someone strong, brave, and quietly remarkable. She prepared for work, arranging her long sleeves and tying her hair neatly, feeling a quiet pride in the woman she had become. At the store, she greeted each customer with her calm voice and steady hands, aware of the respect and curiosity in their eyes. Even those who had once whispered or laughed now treated her with polite acknowledgement and admiration. Mira continued her work quietly, knowing that her life, her courage, and her quiet strength were finally recognized in small but meaningful ways. That evening, Tom returned to the store, greeting Mira with a warm nod. They spoke quietly once more, reflecting on the days past, the challenges they had faced, and the courage they had shared. Mira realized that their connection went beyond recognition. It was a shared understanding of bravery, humility, and quiet endurance. They walked together along the riverbank, speaking softly, their words carrying the weight of shared experience and mutual respect. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in gold and pink, and Mira felt a sense of completeness she had never known. Her scars and tattoo, once hidden and misunderstood, were now symbols of her life, her courage, and her quiet triumph. By the end of the evening, Mira returned home feeling peaceful, content, and confident. She prepared for bed, folding her clothes neatly and arranging the room with care, as she always had. She reflected on the small town that had once laughed at her, and the quiet changes that had begun to take place. Her life, once simple and underestimated, now held a quiet respect and recognition that she had earned through patience, strength, and courage. Mira lay down, closing her eyes with a calm heart, knowing that her story, her scars, and her quiet life were enough. She slept peacefully, ready to face the days ahead with dignity, strength, and the quiet pride of someone who had lived fully and bravely.